Hi, if you're not listening to this story from the beginning, I think you should start with the first chapter. All the chapters are in the description. From Broken Tables to Broken Hearts, a Key West affair. Chapter 3. She paused. Because he wants to marry Lisa. She wants to marry him? Matt. She wants to marry him? Well, yes. I walked back to my chair and sat down. My mind was spinning at a very high speed. Can you give me one reason why she did it? I've given her everything she's ever wanted. I'm not mean to her at all. I don't treat her badly. I think I'm a worthy partner. Why would she want to do that? Honestly? She asked. Of course. There's no need to lie here. Lisa thinks you're a boring science teacher who is always focused on the computer. You have no friends, as you just told me. You have no social life. And you're just dull, according to her. Gordon takes her place. Exciting places. They flew to Boston just for fun, and they were baking cookies on the balcony of their hotel room, and people were watching and cheering them on. She stopped and took a breath. Did you know, of course you didn't, that she had a whole new wardrobe in her house, new clothes, beautiful dresses, evening gowns, things she'd always wanted but never had, and they come out, and she wears them and gets to show off. Also, she got her ears pierced this weekend. I asked her how she was going to hide it from you, and she said you'll never know. She won't let you get close enough to find out, because she'll never do cookie baking with you again. She was quiet for a moment. She's living the life she's always dreamed of, but you never gave her. As she talked, I grew more and more frustrated. All she had to do was ask for... No, heck, she didn't even have to do that. Just give me an idea. A hint, something, anything, and she could have gotten it, but she didn't, and I can't read minds. She reached for another napkin. I stood up. Anyway, thanks, I said. But on the other hand, you betrayed me. We were friends, you and I, but now we're not. I can't be friends with someone who betrays me like that. She jumped up. What was I supposed to do, Matt? She's my sister. Yeah, that's the catch, I asked, opening the door. Where are they now? She looked at her watch. Probably at the gym. He's a fitness enthusiast, and they spend a lot of time there. Which one? Build up on Lake Street in Meadow. Does he live there? She nodded. I suppose you know you and I can never do business with you again. If you print my book, I'll sue you so fast and hard, I'll own the whole building. Do you understand me? She nodded again. Less than an hour later, I walked into the build-up gym. Behind the receptionist's desk sat a girl with Beth's name tag. Are you a member? No, but my wife is. What's her name? I gave it to her. Her eyes widened, and she looked to her left. She jumped up. Wait here, and I will tell her you are here, she said, and headed for the exit. I stopped her. I have a better idea. Wait here, and I'll tell her myself. I put my hands on her shoulders and sat her down in the chair. Lisa was sitting on the exercise bike, looking at it and laughing as I approached. I expected Chris to call and warn her, but she didn't seem to have done so. Lisa didn't see me, but he did. I wasn't dressed for the gym, and he'd never seen me, so he had no idea who I was. He watched as I walked up behind her. Her hair was gathered in a bun at the top of her head, and I could clearly see a shamrock tattoo. Hi, Lisa. Nice tattoo. She turned around sharply, but then it hit her, and she literally fell off her bike. Her boyfriend rushed over to the bike to help her. While he was helping her, I leaned over and grabbed her earlobe and squeezed it. There was definitely something else there besides the earring. She almost screamed. Who the heck are you? Sir Galahad asked. None of your business. I'm talking to this person who used to be a lady and my wife. Not to you. Oh, crap. He said so quietly he could barely be heard. Matt, what are you doing here? I just stopped by to chat and ask a couple of questions. What are you doing here? It's one of my sports days. Don't you remember? She stroked her breasts gently. Oh yes, I do now. Your gym days are identical to your Love Gordon days, aren't they? What do you mean? And who's Gordon? I looked at Gordon. Jesus, Gordy, you must be bad in bed if she's forgotten you so quickly. I looked at Lisa, who with Gordy's help was almost on her feet. You must remember Gordy, I asked Lisa. It was for him that you got your ears pierced. I reached out to grab one of them, and she covered both with her hands and fell down again before she could finally stand up. You've already had your tongue done, haven't you? That last one shocked the heck out of both of them, and their eyes went wide as they looked first at each other and then at me. I don't know when you were going to tell me about him, I pointed at her boyfriend, or how. But now I know, so let's make this quick and easy. You need to get your stuff out of the house, or it's going in the trash can. You have 24 hours. I recommend you store it somewhere, because after you get all your piercings done, and that slug pulls on your earring and gets a blowjob or two with the tongue jewelry he convinced you to do, he's going to get tired of you, just like his other partners, and kick you to the curb. Then you'll need your things. I looked at him. And good luck to you and your blowjobs. Maybe that barbel on her tongue will help improve the quality of her blowjobs. They really are terrible. You might as well stick your junk in a roll of steel wool instead of her mouth. It would have been better. I didn't know if she'd managed to perform oral sex on him, but I assumed she had, so he probably knew what I meant. She could perform other sexual acts pretty well, though. She just didn't like giving blowjobs, and it was noticeable when she tried. She would just kneel or lay there while I was in an awkward situation. She didn't participate in any way, shape, or form, and I didn't want to do something inappropriate. As for him kicking her to the curb when he got tired of her, the only thing I knew about his track record with women was what Eagle had told me. I was almost to the door when Beth returned with 2 policemen. "What's going on here?" asked one of them. "Me? I don't know." "What's the problem?" I asked. "That's exactly what I'm asking you." "Do you see any signs of a problem?" I asked him. "What's your language, sir?" "I just stopped by to chat with my wife and met her boyfriend on the way." "What's wrong with that?" Both officers looked at Beth. "Was there any trouble?" asked one of them. No, sir. Apparently not." "That's good. That means we're done here. Have a good day." And they left. I followed them. I was home when my phone rang. It was Lisa. "Yes, Lisa? Don't you want to know why?" "No. Chris told me everything I needed to know." The next morning, Lisa came home. She rang the doorbell, and I opened the door, stepped aside, and walked out. She said something, but I started whistling and didn't hear her. I wasn't worried about what she would pick up. I wasn't attached to anything but my family photos, a couple small bronzes, my personal papers, clothes, and tools. When I returned a few hours later, I looked around and saw that her things were gone. A few pieces of furniture that she particularly liked were gone too. Everything she didn't take and that I didn't want was going to be thrown away. Even the bed was gone. About the middle of the week, a delivery person came to see me. At first, I thought he was bringing divorce papers, but it turned out to be my book manuscript. Chris returned it. On top was a note that said, "I'm so sorry, please forgive me." The first part of this week was spent feeling sorry for myself and finding reasons to blame everything on Lisa. By the end of the week, a slight change in my thinking began to take place, and I began to question our lifestyle. We had been married for 6 years, but we didn't have any close friends. The only people we invited into our home were either her relatives or people we worked with. We were rarely invited to our neighbor's house unless it was a party of the whole neighborhood, and seeing my wife only 3 or 4 times a year, not counting vacations and weekend trips, was, I decided, not good for a marriage. Well, at least for mine. On the other hand, she never once told me she was unhappy or wanted more. I was moving forward, living what I thought was a perfect life without a single complaint from her. I need a break, I thought. Lisa and I had traveled before, and Florida was my favorite place, so that's where I went. I was having dinner at one of the restaurants in my hotel in Key West. There were 2 couples sitting at the next table eating, laughing, drinking, joking, and just having fun and enjoying each other's company. Something Lisa and I had never done. It came to my attention that I had been there for almost a week and hadn't spoken to anyone but the hotel staff. At that moment, one of the men started to get up, but somehow tripped and fell backward onto my table, knocking it over and landing on his back on the floor with my plate in his lap. I sat there holding my fork with a piece of steak and looked down at him. He looked at my plate of steak, then at me and spoke, "I prefer medium rare, please." The other 3, who by this time had already rushed over to help him, saw that he was okay and started laughing. It was infectious, and I started laughing too. It suddenly came to me that I hadn't laughed in a long time. The person closest to him was one of the women. She bent down to help him up. He grabbed her shoulder to put his arms around her neck, but slipped again. As he fell to the floor a second time, his hand grabbed her off the shoulder blouse and pulled. As soon as he did, her blouse came down, exposing her right chest area. The small group froze for a full 2 seconds, while everyone, including me, stared at the exposed chest area. Finally, she pulled her blouse up, and the man on the floor said, "God, I'm so glad I'm sober. I'll remember seeing that. I tend to forget everything when I get drunk." With those words, with a little help from his friends, he stood up and shook himself off. He looked at me. "Are you all right?" "Sure," I said, as I ate the piece of steak that was on my fork, and then threw the fork on the floor. "Listen," he said, "why don't you join us at our table, since some jerk broke yours?" There was laughter again. At this point, and very uncharacteristically for me, I said, "I'll be happy if your wife can stay dressed." This elicited more laughter. "She's not my wife. She has bigger chest area than my wife." Laughter again. All together, without waiting for the restaurant staff to do it, they rearranged the table and moved my chair over there. Upon hearing his remark about his wife's chest area, 3 college-aged guys 2 tables away began chanting, "Chess tournament, chess tournament, chess tournament." Both women laughed and said no way, so things calmed down. One couple was from Cincinnati and the other from Knoxville. They had met the day before at the beach and had been almost inseparable ever since. I spent the rest of the evening with them. Finally, we finished dinner, and Freddie, the guy who had knocked over my table, insisted on paying for it. His wife was Michelle. The other couple was Ken and Maya. After dinner, we walked down the street to one of the popular bars and left in the wee hours of the morning. I danced with both Michelle and Maya and a couple other women. It was Maya's funny incident we saw at the restaurant, and it turned into a running joke for the rest of the evening. Ken, Maya's husband, kept insisting that it was only fair that we see Michelle's right cheek. I didn't intervene in the discussion or offer my opinion, although I wouldn't mind getting a glimpse of Michelle's or any other woman's chest. We were on our way back to the hotel and had already reached the entrance, and both husbands were still trying to convince Michelle. "Okay, you twisted folks. Let Matt decide." I was walking just a step behind them. Michelle stopped and turned to me. "Matt, you didn't say anything. Should I show my cheek?" I looked at Ken and Freddie, who were nodding their heads vigorously. Maya was in agreement with the men. "You've seen mine. We should see yours," she asked. Wait, I said. "Personally, I'd love to see 1 or even 2 of your cheeks, but I think we should leave that to fate." I pulled a coin out of my pocket. "Heads, then we'll see. Tails, we won't see. All in agreement?" After a short pause to discuss and think about it, they all agreed. I flipped a coin and tossed it onto the sidewalk. There was loud applause from Ken, Freddie, and Maya as the coin lay looking at us. "Oh darn," Michelle said. "Okay, a deal's a deal." She didn't have an open-shouldered blouse like Maya's. She had a regular blouse. "But if you think I'm going to show it here, you're crazy. Let's go to the room." It didn't take us long to get to her room. As soon as we got inside, Ken spoke. "Okay, let's take a look." "Gee," she said, "let me just put my purse down." "Here, I'll take it," Freddie volunteered. "You funny guy," Michelle told him with a smile. Then she looked at me. "Matt, you're the cause of all this. If you weren't sitting next to us, none of this would have happened." "Does that mean you think I should leave?" She laughed. "Heck no. It means you're going to unbutton my blouse. You'll be the first person to undress me other than my husband." "What do you think, prankster?" she asked Freddie. For the first time all evening, Freddie looked a little unsure. "Ah, heck, why not? Come on, Matt." Michelle looked me straight in the eye. "Keep going, Matt," she said quietly, pulled her blouse out of her jeans, and stood up. With more confident hands than I expected, she undid one by one the buttons. The room was quiet and still, as the other 3 stood behind me. When the last button was undone, I didn't know whether to step back or stay. I just stood like that. Michelle looked at me, then at the others. "You jokesters." We all laughed. "Come on, Matt, finish the job. take off my blouse." I stepped closer to her, looked at Freddie, who smirked and shrugged, then reached for her blouse with both hands, pulled it off her shoulders, and it fell to the floor, leaving her standing there in her lacy black garment. I want you all to know that not only has no person undressed me, even though it was only my blouse, but no person, except Freddie and my doctor, has ever seen my chest. This is a very special case. Saying this, she placed her left hand on her chest, reached up with her right, and, as only people can do, unhooked her garment. Then, she brought her right hand up again and cupped her right chest while cupping her left chest with her other hand. "Ready?" she asked. At that moment, we all applauded. Her right hand moved down, taking that side of her garment, exposing her chest, and then almost immediately covering them again. "Oh no!" we all exclaimed with one voice. More than that, we could barely see it. So she did it again and exposed it for about 5 seconds. "Oh darn," she said. "In for a penny, out for a pound." And she took off the entire garment, threw it on the floor, and stayed where she was. After briefly standing there, to joyful shouts and squeals, she bent down, picked up the blouse and put it on, buttoning only the center button. "I hope you're all happy." She laughed. We all agreed that we were. After that, we raided the minibar and enjoyed each other's company for another hour. Ken, Maya, and I were finally ready to go back to our rooms. They all agreed that meeting me had been a pleasant experience. They had no idea what meeting them meant to me. It had literally been a life-changing evening for me. At the door, the men shook hands and hugged the women. I couldn't help but feel Michelle pressed against me especially hard, and knowing that she was without her garment made it even nicer. After the hug, she looked up at me, smiled, and winked. We were still standing in the doorway, and Freddie asked me what I was going to do now. "Heck, that coin I threw down was pretty lucky, so I'm going to see if it's still there." Everyone laughed. I spent a lot of time with them over the next 3 days. We went to the beach, ate, loafed, and drank together. I never felt like a fifth wheel or inappropriate in any way. The funny incident was never mentioned. The evening before Ken and Maya returned to Knoxville, we had dinner. We were sitting in the living room having a goodbye drink when Michelle remarked that it would be nice to stay in touch, so we started entering each other's names and numbers into our phones. Up until this point, we only knew each other's first names. When it was my turn, I said, "Matthew Painter," and gave my phone number. Michelle looked at me silently. "Matthew Painter? The Matthew Painter? It depends on what you mean by the one." "I mean the one. A writer. In that case, the one. Oh my goodness. I love your books. I've read them both. Twice. When is the next one coming out?" Sure enough, within a week I was telling them about Lisa. The book was already finished and was at the publisher, waiting to be printed, when I found out about Lisa. So I forgot about her and will not publish it until we are divorced. That way, she won't get any part of the profits. "Are you sure?" Ken asked. "I can see a legitimate argument that if you created it during the marriage, it should be shared with her." That started a discussion that ended inconclusively when Ken and Maya realized they had a very early flight and needed to pack. So, with handshakes, kisses, and hugs in the evening, we parted ways. Back in my room, I put my phone on the nightstand by my bed when I realized I hadn't made or received a single call all week. It had been a good week. Freddie, Michelle, and I spent the next few days and evenings together. As I flew home, I realized that the 5 of us had grown close, and I didn't want to lose the feeling of having close friends. It dawned on me how much of my life, and Lisa's life, had been wasted. But again, I went back to the same argument that I assumed things were fine, and she could mention that she hadn't been happy all this time in our years together. I landed, picked up my luggage and car, and drove home. If Lisa was there, she had left no clues. The house was exactly as I had left it. To be continued.